If you're like me, you might find the current state of the Pokemon market kind of exhausting. Are you tired of watching your phone every minute just to try to catch a drop of some product, only to get beat by bots milliseconds faster than you? Are you frustrated with all the scalpers selling everything at 2 to 3 times MSRP? Things you once were able to afford now seem impossible? Are you bummed you can't finish collecting the illustration rares from Scarlet and Violet because it seems like a new one is pumped every day to the moon? Do you wish you could stay plugged in to the Pokemon hobby, but find yourself slipping out of interest or losing interest because it's just so exhausting right now? Well, stay tuned because I've been dealing with all of these same feelings lately. But thanks to a good friend, I found a new way to enjoy the hobby that avoids all of these issues, and today I want to share it with you. All right, so if you're like me, it's been kind of exhausting. Prices are just so high on everything, and everything is so hyped up. It's kind of hard to want to touch a lot of those things or buy them for your personal collection or even invest in them in some ways. I've been very nervous even just to invest. So it's like, what do we do right now? How do we still enjoy this hobby when it gets so expensive? I think one solution is to go back. I talked recently about how I'm going back and collecting some vintage. I'm collecting Gym Heroes and Gym Challenge from the vintage era. You could go back to X and Y. You could go back to Black and White, mid-era. There's a lot of older sets that you could go back to that are not in the limelight and are not getting hyped up as bad. But I want to talk about a different one today. I want to talk about playing the game. And whoa, before you click off of the video, hear me out. If you're like me, you might be more of a collector or more of an investor. You might enjoy following more of the market. You might not really ever have considered yourself a player of the Pokemon game. I know I never really was very interested, honestly. I think partly too, the new cards I struggle with because a lot of the EX cards that are very playable, I find to be very ugly and kind of just over the top. Not too big of a fan of like the CGI graphics coming out of the screen in your face. It's too much for me, you know. But I got introduced to a way to play the game recently from a good friend that's been very satisfying, and it's satisfied both the part of me that enjoys playing like board games, strategy games, those sorts of things, but it's also satisfied the collector in me as well. And I want to share that today. So I want to first shout out my friend, The Sleeping Gloom. He got me into this. He's a local friend of mine. Awesome guy, and got me playing the base through fossil format of the TCG. And I got to tell you, I was always under the impression that this was a very simple game. For some reason, I thought, it's simple. There's not much to it. How fun can it be? How interesting can it be? Boy, was I wrong. The rules are pretty simple. They're not very complicated. And I actually think I may make a video in the future where I kind of cover the rules, because I haven't seen a lot of good videos just talking about the rules for base through fossil format. But the strategies can be quite complex. There's a lot of unique ways that you can use the Pokemon from base through fossil, those original 151 Pokemon, and a lot of unique ways to use the trainer cards, which are very powerful in that format in order to make some really interesting strategies. So today I want to show you my first base through fossil deck that I built recently. I got to play one of my friend's decks. He has like 8 different decks. They're really awesome. He's put a lot of work and time into those. He's a beautiful collection of decks, and that's really what they are. They're really a collection in themselves. And so I opted to build the Alakazam damage swap deck. And today I want to go over that deck. I want to talk about how it works, just kind of cover the deck in general. But to start things off, what I've found as I've put this deck together is that not only am I looking forward to kind of creating my own personalized deck that I can use to play, which is actually pretty fun and it's actually pretty satisfying. I've always been a person that likes pulling gear together. I play guitar. Maybe you can see my guitar. Oops, other side. You see my guitar is there in the background. This amp that's right behind me here, I actually oops, I keep pointing to the wrong side. I actually built that amp. I didn't build the cabinet, but I did do all the electronics inside. I hand wired it myself and everything. I built another amp, built some guitar pedals. I've always loved gear and pulling things together into a system. Similarly, just with other hobbies that I've had, I've always, you know, researched the gear and enjoyed pulling it together. So this has been really fun for me to research the decks, figure out how different decks work, what cards I need in the deck, go out and hunt down the cards. It gives you that sense of the hunt that you get with collecting, because you're going and you're collecting these little cards for your deck to build it. And it's been really fun too, because normally I'm the kind of person that wants really pristine, super minty cards, but I know that since I'm going to be playing these, they don't have to necessarily be super minty. So it's been fun to go after like light play, moderate play, sometimes even damaged cards, and just get some of these old cards that have always been nostalgic and special to me to see in a binder and actually get to play with them instead. So you are buying collectibles, which is fun, and they're cheap, they're affordable. And then you're getting to do something with them. You're getting to interact with them in a new way. And I think that's really fun. So without further ado, let's jump into how the deck works. I want to show it off to you guys. And yeah, let's get right into it. I played a tiny bit as a kid. I think I mostly just played like the starter version. They give you those like trainer A and B decks. And it typically comes with like a starter set of rules where there's only 30 cards in the deck, and it's like simplified rules. I think you only have 3 prize cards. But we've been playing like the full format. So if you're familiar with the game, I won't go into all the detailed rules. I might do that in a future video actually, because I haven't seen really a lot of good videos on the base through fossil rules. But basically you're trying to, like I said, get 6 prize cards, which you're going to do by knocking out 6 of your opponent's Pokemon, or you can get them to run out of cards so that when it's their turn, they have nothing to draw from their draw pile. That's called decking out. But either way, there's different strategies to do that. This deck tends to play a little bit more slow. You can actually potentially deck your opponent out. I almost decked my adversary out the other day. In this format, you cannot have more than 4 of any type of card other than basic energies. So that's why you'll see like a maximum of 4 Abras here. This is an Alakazam based deck, but it's also a Mr. Mime / Chansey deck, and I'm going to explain all of that to you here. So Abra, obviously, really not that valuable of a Pokemon in this format. 30 HP is very low, so he can get knocked out very easy. You're going to want to have multiple copies so that you can get evolved up to Alakazam. So I've got 3 Kadabras in here as well. There's also a Pokemon breeder that I'll show you later. And then I have 3 Alakazams. And it's really important that you get at least one of these Alakazams down, if not more. So that's going to take you typically the 3 turns unless you happen to pull the Pokemon breeder, and then you can do it in 2 turns where you can skip the Kadabra stage. Alakazam is the kind of the core functionality of this deck, along with Mr. Mime. And what it is this Pokemon power damage swap. So the Pokemon power can be done whether the Pokemon is on the bench or out in play. And so you're typically going to want Alakazam to be on your bench. He's going to basically be doing his psychic powers from the bench in order to facilitate the Pokemon that is out there and battling, which in this case is going to be Mr. Mime. As often as you like during your turn, before your attack, you may move 1 damage counter from one of your Pokemon to another as long as you don't knock out that Pokemon. This power can't be used if Alakazam is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. So as long as you keep Alakazam on your bench protected, he's not getting asleep, confused, or paralyzed, he can move as many damage counters as he wants from any Pokemon to another Pokemon, so long as you don't knock the Pokemon out. Very, very powerful ability. What that's going to allow you to do is if you have a Pokemon that's out there and it's fighting and it's taking damage, each turn you can move the damage from that Pokemon to a different Pokemon. So comes in Chansey. Chansey is an absolute beast when it comes to HP. 120 HP is just huge. Chansey acts as a large damage reservoir. So you're going to transfer the damage from the Pokemon that is actively fighting to Chansey. You can also use Chansey late game to do 80 damage to a Pokemon to knock it out, but it will do 80 to itself. So it's not really a good normally it's not a very good attacker, but it could be a really good way just to finish the game off at the end. Or if you had a couple chances, swap them in and finish a couple more opponents off if you need to. So the Chansey is going to work with the Alakazam to move the damage from your active Pokemon to Chansey. What you really want to get is Mr. Mime in place. Mr. Mime is the other big key to this deck, because Mr. Mime is going to minimize the amount of damage that you take. He only has 40 HP, so on the surface you might say that's a weak Pokemon, he's going to get knocked out real easy. Well, not so fast. Let's read his Pokemon power. Whenever an attack, including your own, does 30 or more damage, now including your own would be like if he's confused. Confused is where you attacked yourself. After applying weaknesses and resistance to prevent that damage, any other effects of attacks still happen. This power can't be used if Mr. Mime is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. So as long as Mr. Mime is not asleep, confused, or paralyzed, the most damage you can do to him is 20. And if a Pokemon does 30 or more, including with the resistances and the weaknesses, all that kind of stuff, which he doesn't have a resistance, but he does have a weakness. So if a psychic attacker is attacking with 20 damage, that now becomes 40 damage, right? Because it's double in base through fossil. Meaning that Pokemon literally can't damage Mr. Mime at all. So the most damage Mr. Mime will take at any given turn is 20. And then using Alakazam's power, you can transfer the 20 from Mr. Mime to Chansey. So you're going to want to have a couple Chanseys on your bench. You'll want to have Mr. Mime out there fighting, and Alakazam is going to transfer the damage from Mr. Mime to Chansey. Really fun way of playing. Because this deck requires you to get these 3 cards in play, well, at least these 2 cards in play, Psyduck can be a really handy attacker at the beginning. He's got this headache. Your opponent can't play trainer cards during his or her next turn, and it only takes 1 psychic energy. That works perfect for this deck because this is a psychic-based deck, so we're going to have a lot of psychic energies for our Alakazam and Mr. Mime. And Psyduck uses a psychic energy for the headache, so it's perfect. Psyduck is going to allow us to stall while we get everything in place. Because you're preventing your opponent from playing trainer cards, it's going to slow the game way down. So they're going to have to knock Psyduck out. And for them, that may be hard depending on if they've got the right energy for their Pokemon. So it's like even if they're running a Haymaker deck, they may not have the energy that they need, and they may be normally using trainer cards to draw more cards and get the energy that they need. So Psyduck's a great stall for this deck. Next, we get up to Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan is really going to be kind of like a miniature Chansey where it's got 90 HP instead of 120 HP, but it's got this Knight's Fetch command. So if you happen to draw Kangaskhan early in the game, you can use it to kind of help give you draw power to get your setup going. And then you can put extra Kangaskhan's on the bench to act as extra damage sponges like what Chansey does. And I actually like Kangaskhan's attack a little bit better. You flip 4 coins and you multiply it by 20. So he can be used as an attacker if you want. And there is some double colorless energy in here. So 2 double colorless energy would enable a Kangaskhan, which is pretty nice. Next we have Scyther. This is a really common card in this format, as I've been learning. And a big part of that is that it's got this 0 retreat cost, which lets you put Scyther out there. And then if you have, let's say somebody puts a Magmar or something like that, that's Scyther's weakness, you can retreat after you've taken that damage for free. You don't have to pay any sort of penalty to retreat. Also, this Swords Dance, if you do this Swords Dance 1 turn, then the next turn your 30 becomes 60. But 30 for 3 energy is a respectable attack, especially where double colorless can take 2 of these for you, and you slap 1 more on there. Within 2 turns, you can have Slash ready to go, and 70 HP is respectable as well. I forgot to mention here too, another reason why Scyther is so strong is that he has a resistance to fighting types, and Hitmonchan is a very, very, very popular Pokemon. It's the face of the Haymaker deck, and in this format, Hitmonchan is a very strong Pokemon. So Scyther having a resistance to Hitmonchan is very powerful. So if you are facing Hitmonchans, you can swap in your Scyther, get that resistance and really shut down a Hitmonchan from, say, a Haymaker deck or any other deck that's using Hitmonchan. So Scyther is just kind of a common attacker in this format, especially once he came out in Jungle. He's been just an absolute beast of a Pokemon. And he is oftentimes in Haymaker decks. So Scyther can be a great card to attack early in the game, or can be a card that you can swap in if you need to finish people off with your Scyther, and then swap back to your Mr. Mime, which is going to act as your barrier. You've got a whole bunch of Psychic Energy. You got 9 of those to empower Mr. Mime, Alakazam, your Psyduck. And it can be used on all these double colorless Pokemon too, like Chansey and Kangaskhan. You've got 4 grass energy in case you want to do Sword Dance with Scyther, which will let him do 60 in a single turn, which is pretty cool. And then of course, and really you're able to do that. Let me make a point about that too. This deck will let you do Sword Dance a lot more than another deck might, because Alakazam is going to let you pull the damage off of Scyther onto Chansey. So if you're fighting, like I say, a Haymaker deck, which is really all about dishing out damage very quickly, but not enormous amounts of damage, you can actually keep your Scyther out there if you want, power him up with this, transfer the damage off each time, and then do 6 blow 60 each time that you attack, which is really pretty sweet. Again, you have to wait every other turn to do that. Obviously, we're going to max out on double colorless. I've seen very few decks not max out on double colorless in this era, because the colorless Pokemon are so strong in this format. And then this is the whole other key to this, because you're saying, okay, well, if we're swapping damage from Mr. Mime to Chansey, isn't Chansey eventually just going to get KO'd? Well, that's where Pokemon Center comes in. Remove all damage counters from all of your own Pokemon with damage counters on them, then discard all energy cards attached to those Pokemon. The really cool part about this is, let's say I have 200 HP worth of damage that I've put on these 2 Chanseys. So I have 100 on this Chansey and 100 on this Chansey. I can use Alakazam to transfer damage from other cards, make sure it's all on the Chanseys or all on the Chanseys and the Kangaskhan's, drop Pokemon Center, and then these guys, usually I haven't powered up with any energy anyway, so I'm not having to discard any energy when I play Pokemon Center. Usually my energy is going to be on Mr. Mime, it's going to be on Scyther. I might throw one on Alakazam, might throw one on Kangaskhan, but you can try to move your damage to Pokemon on your bench that you don't have energy on anyway. And so this really ends up not costing you anything with this specific deck because of this powerful damage swap maneuver. So really powerful. Pokemon Center becomes extremely powerful with this deck. Pokemon Trader, if you're familiar with this format, it's just common that you're going to want to be able to trade one basic Pokemon for another basic Pokemon on your deck. Really important if you're struggling to find, like, say, your Abra to get your Alakazam going, or maybe you're struggling to get your Mr. Mime. This can be a great way just to get set up more quickly. So Pokemon Traders are always valuable in these early formats. Computer search, you discard 2 cards from your hand in order to search for one specifically. Again, this can be valuable if you this would be obviously if you need a Pokemon, but probably more likely you're struggling to get your Pokemon Center, or maybe you need a specific other trainer card. Maybe you're struggling to get energy, so you need energy retrieval. Whatever it is, it's always a good idea to have some computer search. There's only 2 in this deck because it's not super important, but it is a valuable card. It costs 2 cards, which kind of sucks, but a lot of times in this deck, you'll have a decent amount of like Kangaskhan or some extra Abras or Kadabras that you don't need. And so, or maybe you have some extra grass energy you don't need. So you can trade some of those to get a specific card that you need. Switch becomes really important because you have, even though Scyther has 0 retreat cost, Mr. Mime does have a retreat cost. If you need to swap him out. Also, your Pokemon, if your opponent uses Gust of Wind to get your Mr. Mime out of the active position, or if they confuse him or something like that, so you need to swap him out to kind of clear all that, that's where switch comes in handy. So running 3 switches is really valuable in this deck and pretty important. Then you've got, and again, guys, I'm not an expert on this. I've played this deck like 3 times now, but I've thought through a lot of how this works. I would love to hear more strategies too, if you have been using this deck or are familiar with it, or have maybe alternate versions of this deck too, right? Energy retrieval, very common in this format. Trade one of your other cards in your hand for up to 2 basic energies. Really fun fact about this too. You could trade 1 energy in your hand for 2 energy from your discard pile. So it would be a way to get 2 energy from 1. So it's just 1 of any card basically. So sometimes I might have like a grass energy and I need the 2 psychic energy that are in my discard pile, so I can play energy retrieval to do that. Or again, maybe I've got a spare Abra that I don't need anything for, but I need the extra energy. It is only basic energy though, so you cannot use it to get double colorless, which is unfortunate, but it would probably be overpowered without that. Item Finder, very common card during this time period. Discard 2 other cards in order to put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. This is great too if you can't find your second Pokemon Center and you need to get one more out. You can go dig this out of your discard pile if you need to. Or maybe you need a Pokemon Trader. Maybe you want to grab Pokemon Breeder that you've already used. Maybe your only copy of Gust of Wind you've already used and you need to go retrieve it again. This is a very valuable card because it basically lets you multiply the card count, if you will, of a certain card. And depending on what you're playing against, you may need one trainer more than another. So there's only one Gust of Wind in this deck because it's not necessarily a strong and important part of this strategy, but depending on what you play against, you may need Gust of Wind more than once. And Item Finder can let you get Gust of Wind again. So choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, switch it with his or her active Pokemon. This can be a great way if like you're fighting something that's hard to KO and you need to get rid of it, or you keep getting paralyzed or something like that. Or yeah, there's just a lot of reasons why you would want to do that. Obviously in this particular deck, my opponent's definitely going to need Gust of Wind so that they can get my Mr. Mime out of the slot so that he's not limiting the damage. And what they were probably going to try to do is they're going to Gust of Wind your Mr. Mime and put your Alakazam out there, and they're going to try to KO your Alakazam with 80 HP. So especially if you're fighting a Haymaker deck, they won't be able to KO you in one turn. You will need to use your switch to get Alakazam back on the bench and Mr. Mime back out front. You want to get your Alakazam back on the bench as quickly as possible. I made the mistake one game where I put some damage counters on Alakazam. Very foolish. It allowed my opponent to play the Gust of Wind, flip my Alakazam in, and then KO it. It gave him just enough of that window to KO the Alakazam. So don't do that. But yeah, for your opponent, they're going to want to try to swap your Mr. Mime and Alakazam typically. So that they can kill the Alakazam, because once the Alakazam's damage swap is down, this whole thing falls apart, right? Pokemon Breeder, this just lets you skip Kadabra, so you can go straight from Abra to Alakazam when you evolve the Pokemon. Only one in this deck. You could try to play multiple more copies. I don't know. They chose 2 Kadabras, I think, 3 Kadabras and 1 Pokemon Breeder. I could maybe see an argument for more Pokemon Breeders and less Kadabra, but here's one thing I will say: the value to having the 3 Kadabras and the 1 Pokemon Breeder. If your opponent is playing Psyduck against you, you're not going to be able to play any trainer cards. So you're going to badly need your Kadabra in order to evolve to Alakazam, and that's where you wouldn't be able to play Breeder. So probably makes a lot of sense in this deck just to have 1 copy. And then of course you got to have Professor Oak. This is basically just, you could use it early in the game if you have a really bad hand to discard and draw 7, but the more you do this, you risk deck out, you risk running out of cards. I think where this is more valuable is if I've burned through a ton of trainers and now I have a tiny hand with very little in it, then I can oak. Maybe I only have like 1 or 2 cards left in my hand. Then I can oak and get a whole fresh set of 7. Really powerful when you use it that way. Less powerful if you're discarding a whole full hand for oak. And then Gambler, again, is kind of a similar concept to oak, except the nice part about this is you can shuffle it into your deck. So you still get those cards later, which is pretty cool. I want to add real quick on the Gambler card, because at first I thought, is it even worth having this card in your deck? But if you think about it, it may be worth it if, let's say, you have a hand full of cards that you don't need yet. You need them later, but you don't need them now. Gambler could be a great way to shuffle them into your deck where you can hopefully pull them up later and then potentially get yourself 8 new cards. Or you might only get 1, but at that point, if you have cards that you don't need yet anyway, it still may not hurt. And I saw that in one of the games where I had like 3 or 4 cards. They were cards that I would eventually want, but there were cards I didn't need right away. So I ran Gambler. I got lucky and I got myself 8 brand new cards. And some of the cards I needed were in those 8. So anyway, that is an overview of the damage swap deck. Guys, this is a super fun deck to play. And I've just been having an absolute blast with this base fossil format. And honestly too, for me guys, like playing with these old vintage cards, it's really fun. It's been really nostalgic to like have more of a use for them other than them just sitting in the binder. And now I'm seeing them more often too, because I'm like playing with them. I don't know. It's super fun. It's cool to see Alakazam being a freaking boss, you know, transferring damage from one Pokemon to another. Very much goes with the lore of who he is. It just gives me more appreciation for all these trainer cards too. Trainer cards that like sat in my binder for years and that I just didn't care about at all. This is really fun, guys. If you're getting frustrated with how expensive the market is right now, because it is, there's a lot of just really expensive things. This is really affordable to get into, really affordable. Find a friend, you know, each build your own deck. I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video to a website that the Sleeping Gloom showed me that's been fantastic. Helped me get up to speed with all this stuff. It gives a bunch of suggestions on how to use different cards, and it also talks about different decks you can build. I'm already working on a couple other decks. So it's a lot of fun, guys. It still hits the collector aspect of this hobby for me because I get to collect these old cards. I also don't have to get them in minty condition. I can get them in played condition, moderate play, light play, whatever, sometimes even damaged, because I'm going to use them for play, you know. And I do double sleeve them. I've got a perfect fit dragon sleeve and then a larger sleeve. And again, shout out to the Sleeping Gloom. He showed me those. You know, so you have a perfect fit sleeve on the inside that is the opposite direction, and then you've got this dragon fit or dragon sleeve, dragon, what is it, dragon skin? You got these dragon shield. I keep saying the wrong name. Dragon shield. These are awesome. And so dragon shield makes both the inside perfect fit and these awesome outside sleeves. So yeah, really thankful for my local game shop helping me out, you know, picking these out for me. But they work great. They work awesome, and they protect your cards really well. And it's just fun to play with all these old cards that, again, I only appreciated as a collector, and now I can appreciate both as a collector and a player. So yeah, I just challenge you guys, if you're getting frustrated with the hobby right now, maybe you're getting kind of bored because things are too expensive. This could be a cool thing to check out. Could be a cool way to get plugged in, stay plugged into the hobby, have a lot of fun, enjoy some nostalgia. Obviously, there's a different formats that you can do besides just base through fossil. But this format has very powerful trainer cards and some really interesting strategies. Like, for instance, this damage swap strategy is pretty cool, I think. And other decks have different strategies as well. So anyway, I'm definitely not an expert on this stuff, guys, but I just wanted to talk about it because I've been really interested in it. And I thought maybe there's a bunch of you out there that might just be collectors and not really play the game. maybe you might want to consider doing what I've done, where I'm just getting into playing now. So again, those of you that are more experienced in playing the game, please leave me a comment. Correct me if I made a mistake explaining any of this. Leave a comment too on some of the strategies you've used with this deck. If there's other cards that you swap in this deck, and if you would build this deck differently. Or maybe even just tell me about your favorite deck that you like to play with for base through fossil. Would love to hear about it. But yeah, guys, get creative right now. The market's crazy, but there is still a lot of really cool things that you can collect or do in the Pokemon hobby. Might just be a good time to get more creative than you normally are. Anyway, thanks for checking in, guys. I hope that this was interesting to you. Hope it wasn't too long and boring. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and I would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on this Pokemon collecting, investing, and now playing journey. See you guys later. Bye-bye.